All right. First rule of this channel, we do not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So, welcome to week 13's How the Sausage Was Made, where I take a look at the box scores and see what we're going to be looking at for Tuesday's after waiver show. So, there's a lot of reactive stuff that's going to be going on this week. I think there's a lot of injuries that are going to permeate into the playoffs. It looks like one league for me, I may be picking up the number one seed in a bye. Another one I lost. I saw Deebo and DK Metcalf this week. I'm going to hang 120. My opponent's going to hang 145 because of DK and Deebo. So hopefully your week went a little better or possibly a little worse than I did. But let's start looking into it. Deebo. The reason why I'm talking about Deebo today is DK was on Thursday night. We already saw that. So Deebo Samuel, MVP of the week right now, or for today, Sunday night games. 3 carries, 22 yards, 1 touchdown, another 4 for 4 for 116, 2 touchdowns. So I've talked about this before. These guys that are good players on good offenses with other good weapons, they tend to cannibalize each other. And the interesting thing about Deebo, what makes him valuable is when he can get that little bit of rushing work in there to give him a floor and the possibility for a much higher ceiling than some of the other wide receivers. And then DK getting it done for the first time this year, big time, with the 3 touchdowns and the 6 for 8, 134 on Thursday night in that non-predictive matchup against the Cowboys, which is also a bigger thing. And then Geno Smith, another non-predictive guy, getting it done with his near 31 points, 3 touchdowns, another rushing touchdown on the year. And again, this is a guy that has nimbly bimbly, but hasn't really been showing it off since earlier last season. So for Geno Smith to get it done against the Cowboys, probably was on a lot of benches. That's interesting enough. And then Tyreek Hill is in contention for most valuable overall player, by value, not per capital spent, just overall most amount of fantasy points relative to position. Because we can do kind of this idea of the apples to apples position by position. Like quarterback points are easier to reproduce than some of the other positions. Tight ends points are the hardest to reproduce, and then touchdown running back points tend to taper off, and then wide receiver points are easiest overall. So like Tyreek Hill overall, apples to apples may be the overall most valuable guy during the fantasy football season. Nico Collins, I mean, he's going to be another guy that's in contention for overall value. So outside of this stretch where he kind of went from being kind of unpredictive, he's back. This 12 targets, 9 receptions, 1 touchdown in the Texans win today. And then moving on from that, Brock Purdy, like I said, he's got enough toys and he's talented enough that he's going to be able to win you your league. The problem with him is if that floor hits during the playoffs, he can also lose your league. But you can see right now, quarterback 2 overall on the week going into the Monday night games. And that's just based off the fact that he's got the toys to be throwing those touchdown passes. And the Eagles defense has been a little bit disappointing, so that's not necessarily a surprise. Jalen Hurts continues to get it done. 1 touchdown pass, 1 rushing touchdown pass, again showing the elite quarterbacks, that rushing upside that goes big. And Jordan Love, we're going to talk a lot about the Packers. They may not win leagues this year, but definitely all those toys are going to be undervalued next year. I'd almost guarantee it. There's going to be all of them. You're looking at, I'm going to guess next year, 9 fantasy relevant guys that should be drafted off the Packers next year, their offense. And then Matt Stafford, a little bit surprising, getting it done against the Browns. Sam Howell, I mean, that's a little surprising. I think I stopped watching this game early. So the fact that he got 2 rushing touchdowns later, and didn't get the passing upside that I was kind of expecting. And then the interesting thing about Tua, 8 overall on the day, him getting it, this is mostly early because they jumped out to a 21-0 first half lead. And then there's Russ staying in the streaming category. Again, that rushing floor, even with the low passing volume and 3 interceptions. And then Minshew, another one that I'm a little surprised jumped up there. Wow, I didn't even see that Joe Flacco had such a fantasy relevant game. Quarterback 11 right now. Kamara, 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry did get knocked out, but 2 more touchdowns for Henry. Then A-Chain, and this is mostly later in the game. They, Tua got it done earlier, then Mostert got his, and then A-Chain later. James Conner, ghosted James Conner sighting, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then Chuba in that overall fantasy volume is or opportunity is king. DK, and then Samuel, Tyreek, Nico Collins, CeeDee Lamb on Thursday, and then showing that the age apex for wide receivers doesn't matter. Micah Evans, 7 for 12, 162 and a touchdown, 75-yarder, and then Christian Watson getting back up there. Like this may be the thing for Christian Watson. He just wins leagues late. 7 for 9, 71, 2 touchdowns, another 15 yards on the ground. And then again, Michael Pittman, Puka Nacua, these are guys that, like I talked about, like going into the draft, these guys are somewhat predictive because of how low their value is in the draft coming into the season. So like throwing like a 6th, 7th round pick on Michael Pittman and then like a 13th round pick on Puka Nacua, like these are guys that, like, if Michael Pittman doesn't pay off like week 1, I can throw him away. Like he may not even factor into my lineup depending on where he was going in certain leagues. And so I've talked a lot about Michael Pittman, and same thing with Puka Nacua. What did it cost a guy to pick up Puka Nacua in the 13th round, expecting at least 4 weeks of a wide receiver 3 with Cooper Kupps to start the season? Those are the type of things I look at. So Sam Laporta, this was a little interesting. Again, with all the guys that Detroit has, that there are going to be guys that, again, this is the thing. I want great players on okay offenses. I do not want good players on good offenses because they will cannibalize each other. Trey McBride's going to be a unicorn. I talked to one of my co-managers. We may hit the fantasy playoffs and be running Trey McBride as our flex with Travis Kelce as our tight end. Jake Ferguson. I don't like, I let's call him Ferg Daddy, like the underdog guys do. 6 for 8, 77, a touchdown on Thursday night. Taysom Hill again. The value of Taysom Hill comes from all the scoring opportunities he gets if he's a tight end in your league. That's where his value comes from. So you're not chasing the opportunity for like one touchdown. You're getting multiple opportunities for a touchdown from throwing, rushing, and receiving. And then Harrison Bryant, that's a little surprising as the overall tight end 5. Bryce Aubrey for the Cowboys, 15 points. Matt Gay, 14 points for the Colts. Not overwhelmingly surprising there. Carlson for Green Bay, 11 points. Saunders for Miami. Green Bay, that's not surprising. Okay offenses, that's what we're kind of looking for with kickers. And then Saunders is just part of a good offense overall. And then the Rams kicker overall, I can see okay offense against a good defense would give you the opportunity there. And then defense overall, we have the Falcons against the Jets. So that was like really predictive, obviously. I'm kind of kicking myself now for not rolling that out and sticking with the defenses I had. And the Colts also was another one that's predictive, going up against Tennessee. Again, rookie quarterback, bad offense. Chargers, a bad offense. That's another one predictive. Miami going up against the Redskins, being able to jump out with a lead and then putting pressure on them. Scoring equals pressure equals sacks equals turnovers. So that's kind of the thought process behind it. And then again, the Jets in their ugly game against Atlanta. So that's another one's kind of predictive. Good defense against bad quarterback play is how we would look at that. So, right, looking at the box score at this point. So Colts Texans. So this one was a little all over the place. Like when I saw this early on, it looked like the Colts were going to start taking or pulling away with this game. So I guess like the Tennessee tied it up late and then went to overtime. And then this is what I talked about earlier with the guys like Alec Pierce. So Alec Pierce is just this big play X that's just going to run downfield, getting paid to do wind sprints. But when you're on the field for like 90 to 100% of snaps and you're in a run-based offense that runs a lot of plays because they run a lot of pace. I've been talking about this all year. Like he had a 37-yarder to go along with a 55-yard or 37-yarder that got home, and then a 55-yarder that set up the go-ahead touchdown. So that's just a guy like any given week with a guy like this. Like if you're hurting, you could throw a guy out there like this and you could get that game. So overall, from a wide receiver standpoint, like he finishes wide receiver 11, and he's able to let you go. You'll get in the range of those other top 10 guys that are all mostly predictive by just throwing that level of wide receiver 3 out there. And then Michael Pittman, I don't know at this rate if Michael Pittman is going to finish as a wide receiver 1. That depends on the points drop off. But like overall, like value wise, he's going to be one of the better pickups. Like I talked about this before. Like one of the last videos I'll do before I shut the channel down, going into the off season, is looking at the 12 to like 24 guys that end up being the main reason why everybody wins their leagues. It comes down to like 12 to 24 picks overall on a season. Michael Pittman's probably going to be one of those guys, because if you drafted Michael Pittman and you rolled him in your flex, you're getting like wide receiver 2 / wide receiver 1 usage. If you drafted Michael Pittman as a wide receiver 2, again, you're overdoing it. If you missed on your wide receiver 2, you could slot him in. You could even go running back heavy, other positions heavy, and then you get like this almost like quasi free wide receiver 1. So from the Titans standpoint, I'm not going to really talk about Will Levis. He's not really fantasy relevant right now. Derrick Henry, 21 carries, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then I did see he got knocked out with a concussion. So Tajay Spears, 16 for 75. So hopefully the Derrick Henry owners out there, you've cuffed going into the playoffs. And if not, like Tajay Spears, like how much is a win week worth? How much is a win worth going into week 14, where playoffs and bye weeks are on the line? So Tajay Spears, like again, this is another guy like at this point, depending on all the guys that we're going to look at, and we'll talk about this in like a little bit on Chasing the Dragon by ranking these guys next week. But Tajay Spears right now, like 1 week rental, like drop the farm on a guy like that. So 16 for 75, and then another four receptions, 13 yards, and 6 targets. So again, like that's one of the things like Tajay Spears has more individual value than Derrick Henry, because Derrick Henry had 2 targets and Tajay Spears had 6. So he will be more involved with the passing game. And then moving on from that, like DeAndre Hopkins, 12 targets. So again, opportunity is the king. Those 12 targets in that offense, even though this is relatively a run heavy offense, those are still the 12 targets that we're going to look at. And then I did kind of call this with Chig based off the matchup, run based offense versus a very bad passing defense, and then the ability to suck up on play action. So I am a little would go look. This is piquing my interest, so I'm wanting to see how Chig got home this week against the Colts, big plays or not. And again, long at 39, that's what Chig does. Very efficient when he gets his opportunities. All right. So Chargers Patriots, again, this was another one, and let me mute this if I can. This is another one that I was talking about. Like the Chargers have been very inconsistent, sometimes good offense. Teams that we thought were going to be good are going to be bad. That's the Chargers this year. There's no brass tack, or there's no other way about that. Like I don't want to have pieces of this offense anymore. So I talked about benching Justin Herbert, 22, 37, 212. The Patriots' basic game plan is it doesn't matter if you have better athletes than us. We're just going to make you have to make plays over and over again, and otherwise you'll beat yourself. And we're going to take away your number one receiver or your best offensive player. Austin Eckler has not looked good this year. I think he's hit the age apex. He's on the other side going on his way down. So all they do is they basically just take away Keenan Allen, and then Quentin Johnston, who's not ready to be the number one, has to step up in this game. And again, 7 targets, that's trending in the right direction, maybe for next year. Like again, I don't think he's a very good fantasy asset or even a good football player, but that's what you're looking at, like just chasing those things. So there's a possibility Quentin Johnston for the rest of the season maybe falls in that wide receiver 3 range because they don't have anybody else to go in there. Let's see. And then I did see Ramondre went down with an ankle, so Zeke is going to be a priority this week. And again, I would probably put Zeke underneath Tajay Spears. That again, the offense, and then I just don't know how much Zeke is going to be really involved with the passing game, even though he did have 5 targets, 4 receptions for 40 yards. And then I did talk about this, like I don't want to be chasing horizontal targets where I don't even know if what's his face played. But Devontae Parker, 9 targets, 4 for 64. So these are going to be downfield more than likely, those targets. So again, chasing those wide receiver 3s in those range have a little bit more interest to me than some of the other guys. All right. Lions and Saints. So did see this one. So the Lions did jump out 21 to nothing in the first quarter, and then the Saints were able to claw their way back into this game late. So Jared Goff, 2 touchdowns, 16 for 25, 213. Jahmyr Gibbs, 8 for 60. David Montgomery, 18 for 56, got home with a touchdown. Jameson Williams, I didn't even see Jameson Williams had a touchdown on a carry, 19-yard carry. Bigger news: Sam Laporta, 9 targets, 9 for very efficient, 9 for 9, 140 and a touchdown. Amon-Ra, 6 targets, but only 2 receptions, 49 yards, did get a touchdown. And then Jameson Williams only 1 target. Josh Reynolds, who is the number 2 in the offense. It's just that we would kind of be expecting Jameson Williams to move into that number 2 role for fantasy playoffs. And then David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs combined for 4 targets, 2 receptions, and -7 yards. So again, that kind of explains a little bit of why the Saints were able to claw their way back into the game. Derek Carr, I did see get knocked out again. I think this upgrades the weapons in New Orleans from a fantasy standpoint. If he misses sometimes, and Jameis Winston can come in. Taysom Hill, 13 carries, 59 yards, 1 touchdown. Again, if you have him as a tight end, probably still the most valuable tight end in fantasy this year. Alvin Kamara, 14 for 51, 2 touchdowns. And then a little surprised that Lynn Bowden, not a little surprised that Lynn Bowden wasn't as involved. 2 carries for -6 yards to go with 1 target for 5 yards, because Chris Olave was a little bit of surprise start. 8 targets, 5 receptions, 119. And then Kamara had 8 targets, 6 for 58. And then there's A.T. Perry, did get 1 target or 3 targets, 1 reception, 30 yards. Foster Moreau, always got to root for the guy coming back from chemo or from leukemia. And then Taysom Hill, two targets, 2 for 15. And then Jimmy Graham, I did see this earlier in the game, a vulture to touchdown. So that's what we're looking at. So overall in this one, am a little interested. I think famous Jameis. I don't know how many people are really going to be needing to roll out a streamer next week, but like Jameis Winston would be in that category of being able to get you home, because we don't necessarily care about how bad he is on a real football field. He's going to have the opportunity to give high volume passing, and he's going to have weapons there in New Orleans. All right, Jets and Falcons, as ugly as it sounds, I did see that the Jets jumped out to 2-0 lead. Bijan got caught in the end zone for safety. So Desmond Ridder, 12 for 27, 1 touchdown, 121 through the air. Bijan, and this is what goes all the way back. Like, I hate to say I told you so, but when I'm right, I'm right. When I'm wrong, I will tell you I'm wrong. In this case with Bijan, having this inefficient 18 carries for 53 yards and along a 12. Like, that's not what you want from a fantasy guy. We'll talk about some of the other guys, the running backs that got home this week. Like, we want more usage in the passing game, because passing the receptions by a running back are always more efficient. So just running a guy into the back of the offensive line, I would rather him have 12 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown, because the offense is better. Obviously, we all want touchdowns, but I'm saying, like, if the offense was run better, he would have more red zone opportunities. Even if he wasn't the red zone back, he would get the opportunities, because they would get there more often. And then, because we want Bijan to be used in the passing game, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 26 yards, those red zone targets will convert into more touchdowns, because receptions are more efficient than rushes. So receptions in the red zone can turn into touchdowns at a similar rate to rushes within the 5-yard line, the goal line. All right, and then Kyle Pitts, 8 targets, 451, and then Drake London 1 for 8. So I'm glad I didn't roll out my Drake London shares next week. And again, that's part of the reason why I would be moving towards a 2 tight end comp with my Trey McBride shares. A tight end is going to have more value than Drake London, who's one of the more, in my opinion, Drake London is one of the best wide receivers in football, because of his size, speed, and his ability to run in breaking routes with that size speed comparison. And then whatever's going on with the Jets, I did see that this loss may cause Aaron Rodgers not to come back this year, because they're basically eliminated. So Tim Boyle, who's probably one of the worst quarterbacks in all football, some of the thought process is he's a really good backup quarterback who can break down tape and work the quarterback room. That's why he's in there. But he's 14 for 25 and an interception, and they brought in Trevor Siemian, who again may not be an upgrade to Zach Wilson, but he probably is an upgrade to Tim Boyle. Dalvin Cook, 9 for 35. He did fumble in limited usage. Breece Hall, 13 for 16. Again, this is just ugly. And then the only other guy that really has any fantasy value is Garrett Wilson, 7 targets, 3 for 50. Trevor Siemian, 3 fumbles. Okay, so with it, just in the limited time he's in the game, 3 fumbles, 1 loss. Dalvin Cook, 1 fumble. The Jets are just a mess. And talking about like next year, Garrett Wilson may be undervalued even with Aaron Rodgers, because of how bad the Jets are playing, that everybody's going to really not want a piece of any of these guys. So I could even see Breece Hall probably being a 3rd or 4th round pick in a lot of leagues, because of how bad this is turning out. They're going to have to do a lot of work to on the offensive line from a fantasy perspective to make these guys be valued at where they should be valued or overvalued. And that's what we look at a lot from a fantasy perspective in ADP is being guys being valued correctly. And how can I take advantage of guys being valued incorrectly? Cardinals and Steelers. This is one of the ones that killed me is I did not roll out my James Conner shares. 25 for 105, 2 touchdowns later in the game. Michael Carter did look good on his limited 4 for 25. He's going to be that third down type back, that change of pace guy. Not used in the passing game, but I did see that he was getting it on like some of the 2-minute work. Kyler Murray, this was a predictive game to shut him down because of how ugly it was going to be. 145 through the air, 1 touchdown on 13 for 23. Really didn't need to do a lot of nimbly bimbly, 9 for 20. And then the big news, Trey McBride. Right now, with how Trey McBride's going to finish the season, he's definitely going to be in top 5 tight end. He's going to be in that premium range or close to it. 8 for 89 and a touchdown on 9 targets. And one of his targets, I believe he may have had another touchdown called back. I was kind of paying attention to this game. And then the other disappointing thing, so trying to get ahead of the curve, the same process that will win me my league will lose me my league. Hollywood Brown, 3 targets, no receptions, no yards. And then he left early with the heel that he's been missing on. So like when I said like go out, I went out and I bought Hollywood Brown for Ramondre in one league, expecting that I could get like a very solid to maybe low end wide receiver 1 to or wide receiver 2 to low end wide receiver 1, and I didn't get that. So again, like you got to make those moves, because otherwise, if you just expect the championship to come to you, you're going to get burned more often than not. And then from the Pittsburgh perspective, so Mitch Trubisky came in the game. I didn't even see this, so this is interesting. I want to look up what went on with Kenny Pickett and showing how, again, good I am. So miss a couple weeks with an ankle. So Kenny Pickett leaves with an ankle. Mitch Tribb is definitely a downgrade to Kenny Pickett. So our hopes of maybe getting some league winners out of Pittsburgh, this hurts. I don't think this necessarily hurts Najee and Jalen Ward going forward. I think they are still in that running back 2 range. Najee 16 for 63, and then Jalen Ward 8 for 59 on the ground, no touchdowns. And that goes along with 3 for 2 for 14 for Najee, and then Jalen Warren 3 for 1 for -4. But where it really hurts, I think, is George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, who are already flirting with maybe not being fantasy relevant, maybe not being predictable enough with a high enough ceiling to be plays. George Pickens 5 for 4 for 86, and then Deontay Johnson 5 for 4 for 33 and a touchdown. Pat Freiermuth 5 for 3 for 29. So then if they don't have enough passing volume and we just don't really know where the guy who's going to get the ball, like you can roll out an Alec Pierce and get the same outcome as Pickens or Johnston. And then again, tight ends can never lose me in my league. So like the Pat Freiermuth thing, he's going to be around a tight end 1, like a streaming tight end 1. But you're just never going to know when it's going to be his week versus some of the other guys. And it's going to be a downgrade with Mitch Tribb because he's not as good as Kenny Pickett. All right, Dolphins and Commanders. So again, as I bring this up, like this was something I don't remember when this first touchdown happened, and I can actually look it up for you because I can be somewhat professional. So it was 17-0, and then 38-7 in the third quarter when Devin Achane scored, and then that's when the second touchdown for the Commanders happened, and then Achane fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, a 2-yard run. So like this was out of hand early. That's why you see Mike White. The Dolphins put it in cruise control. Raheem Mostert got a touchdown to stay relevant. Tyreek Hill 5 for 57, 2 touchdowns. That was on 7 targets. Jalen Warren 8 targets, 5 for 52. Devin Achane the 4 for 3 for 30. That was mostly later in the game. Raheem Mostert 1. So I could definitely see that Achane's going to move back in this, and these two guys are going to cannibalize each other a little bit. And again, remember that the Dolphins schedule down the line, it gets really bad. When we look at the Titans, the Jets, the Cowboys, and the Ravens going into the playoffs. So like, I don't know how much I really want to be putting my hat on the Dolphins going into the playoffs to win me some stuff outside of Tyreek Hill going forward. And again, the other thing is like Achane is so efficient that like I probably would still be rolling him out regardless. 17 for 73, 2 touchdowns. And again, those both came late. And then Sam Howell, again, I don't need to know how the sausage is made because overall on the week, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, I believe. Yeah, this quarterback 7, because he got 2 rushing touchdowns. And sometimes I don't need to know that, but I know I was expecting this to be more like a 300 to 400 yard passing game. He didn't get there, so he gets me there with the 2 touchdowns on the ground. Then I did see that Brian Robinson went out in this game, so we want to take a look if we have any news on that one. So Brian Robinson with an injury, and I have no idea what it is at this point. But again, like that would not just move up Antonio Gibson, it would move Chris Rodriguez into picking up. So like after waivers wise, like everybody's going to go after Antonio Gibson, and then just that small little bid on Chris Rodriguez to potentially move into that Brian Robinson role. And that's also from the standpoint of blocking, even if I'm not going to roll these guys out in week 14, 15, depending on what the injury news is on Brian Robinson. And then again, this is unfortunate, but like the tea leaf said, roll out the wide receivers for the Redskins, and nobody got home. So there's no one really to talk about. Really disappointing. Oh, I didn't even see Terry McLaurin, 3 targets, 0 receptions. That's a little surprising. And then Dotson and Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel's the only one that gives you a 40-degree day out of all of that. All right, Broncos and Texans. And again, this was another one that I saw look like the Texans were going to run away with this game, and then the Broncos were able to will their way back into it, and then Houston got away with it late, even though the Broncos had the opportunity. So Russell Wilson, 15 for 26, 186, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Those 3 interceptions are the killer. And then Javonte, again, volume based, 13 carries, 46 yards, and 3 for 24. So he's able to stay in that running back 2 range, that volume based range, even though he didn't find the end zone. Courtland Sutton finds the end zone again, 7 targets, 2 receptions, 77 yards, touchdowns. He's going to be one of those guys on that list based off of where he was going. And hopefully, like if you're a Courtland Sutton owner, like as your wide receiver 2 or your flex type guy, that you just leave him there and you don't overthink it, because however it's getting done, even though the fantasy gods are saying like, or the efficiency metrics are saying don't play this guy, the fantasy gods are saying yes, you should. So moving on to the Texans. So one of the other interesting thing I saw was Dameon Pierce took over the backfield again. He was inefficient, 15 for 41, 1 touchdown. Devin Singletary, 8 for 36. He was efficient. And overall, I don't see Pierce being used in the passing game. And then the negative news, Tank Dell broke his ankle, so he's done. It's going to upgrade Noah Brown. Unfortunately, from a fantasy perspective, we just kind of got to move on with that. Say all the nice stuff, but like, hey, it happens. And Nico Collins, 12 targets, 9 for 91 and a touchdown. And then a little predictive. I saw this last second. Dalton Schultz was ruled out. So then Brevin Jordan steps in 4 for 3 for 64. So you just want pieces of this offense. That's the rule for this. So if the Dalton Schultz goes out, then Brevin Jordan steps up and becomes fantasy relevant. And Brevin Jordan is a 3rd-year guy, I think, from Miami. And he has been flirting with fantasy relevant. He is athletic, so that's not entirely surprising. Noah Brown did play, 2 targets, 2 targets, no receptions, no yards. So again, trying to predict the guy that's going to get you home. Well, now that those opportunities are going to be funneled to Nico Collins. So the Nico Collins owner is going to be the winner of this with the Tank Dell injury. And there still may be Noah Brown weeks. They may be non-predictive. We could also see the possibility that Robert Woods is going to be that wide receiver 3 that gets some of that usage later in the game. And I say Jimmy Ward's interception saves the day for the Texans. If you're wondering, like I said, the interceptions are what killed it later in the game for the Broncos and Russell Wilson. All right. And unfortunately, this is not a real football show. This is a fantasy football show. So all I care about is the numbers. So Bryce Young, this is again another game that like predictive. The analytics say the Panthers are not good at football. Maybe we would have saw some type of bump with the firing of all the offensive personnel. We didn't. The offense kind of looked like it was the same. Other thing with Chuba Hubbard out there, 25 carries, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, opportunity is king. So even if though he's on a bad offense, Tampa Bay has not been as good on defense as they were in the past. So he's able to get home. And again, these are like two. If I thought, if you were to tell me how Chuba Hubbard was going to get home, I would say Chuba Hubbard's going to get home in the passing game. No targets. He gets home on 2 rushing touchdowns. That really surprises me overall. Miles Sanders 8 for 23. So like he's hanging around as the cuff if you're into that type of thing. And then Jonathan Mingo, I've been talking about this for a while, 10 targets, 6 for 69. So we talk about guys having value in the fantasy playoffs. So Jonathan Mingo right now, out of all of the guys that are going to be priority ads that everybody else is going to knife fight for, Jonathan Mingo is probably going to be the guy in the fantasy playoffs that's going to have that spike week that's going to get you, week 15. He's going to get you in the semis. In the semis, he's going to get you the chip. In the chip, he's going to win you a championship. We may not be able to predict the week that he does it, but right now it looks like it's going to happen. And it's just a matter of trying to predict that week. Maybe not the Saints, maybe not the Falcons. I can maybe see that it's going to happen against the Packers in the semis, maybe against the Jaguars in the chip. So like right now, like Jonathan Mingo is a guy that I really would be stashing, trying to see how this is. And again, when we talk about Rashee Rice here in a second, sometimes like we can't expect that these guys are going to have this exponential growth and continue to tack things on. We want the snap shares. We want to see the snap shares stay consistent or rise. We want to see the opportunities be there. Sometimes they're just going to have bad weeks. Sometimes the defense is going to take them away. These are some of the things that we may not be able to predict. Sometimes teams are just going to go like, you know what, you want to take that guy away, I'll go to the number 2. And we weren't expecting that. Sometimes teams will just like force feed, a guy, a great player on a good offense or an okay offense. That's why we would rather have that guy, because it doesn't matter what the defense does. They're going to throw that guy the football. So trying to predict sometimes with some of these guys, like all we can do is put ourselves in the best position to win a week. Browns and Rams, little surprising on this one, that that later in the game that the Rams were able to score so many points. So I have my Kieran Williams shares. I got him week 1. And so like I was looking at this game going like, hey, this is ugly. Puka Nacua 70-yard touchdown in the first quarter. Have him in one league, trade him in another league. That's how it rolls. And then big time plays in the fourth quarter. You see that like Cooper Kupp got home with the 3-yard touchdown pass when the score was still relatively close. After Harrison Bryant touchdown, and then Kieran Williams 1-yard touchdown. Fantasy unicorn. How with his usage overall. So good time stuff. So Joe Flacco was efficient. 23 or 40 or serviceable. 23 or 44, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Kareem Hunt 12 for 48. Pierre Strong 2 for 20, and then Jerome Ford 9 for 19. Not too surprising. Jerome Ford's kind of a boom bust runner. And they're how they use him. Some of the weirdest usage I've ever seen when I've watched the tape on Jerome Ford. It's a lot of, they like to get him to the edge and use that speed, so they don't really run him too much between the tackles. And when he does run between the tackles, doesn't look the most comfortable when he does that. Elijah Moore, 12 targets. Again, this is a little predictive. 4 for 83, so not efficient, but did kind of get some yardage off of that. Not any no opportunities in the rushing game. Harrison Bryant hanging around, that's not going to be predictive. Amari Cooper was active, 5 for 3 for 34. Jerome Ford did score a touchdown, 3 for 33. That's part of why he remains an RB2, is that rushing work or that receiving work that he's going to get. They do like him as a receiver there. Cedric Tillman, we are following this 6 targets again. When the snap shares come out, I would imagine that he's still going to be in that 80% range. And he's another one that I could imagine that if we're trying to predict the week that he's going to have that boom week, maybe the Jaguars, maybe the Bears, the Texans, probably not the Jets, based off the matchup, but there's at least 3 games where he's going to probably have that top 20, top 10 finish. Based off of the usage. So this is a guy like that after waivers, air yards on those 4 receptions are interesting. David Njoku, the 6 targets were expected, the 2 for 17. That's a little disappointing, but again, that's how it rolls sometimes. Kieran Williams, 21 for 88, a touchdown. And then Puka Nacua, 7 targets, 4 for 105, a touchdown, that 70-yarder. And then Cooper Kupp did lead everybody in targets, 8 for 6 for 39 and a touchdown. So again, wide receiver twos, they're going to be volatile. That's what we're expecting overall. And then Kieran Williams, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 24 yards. So like again, that's just, it doesn't matter. That's running back one usage, and that's league winner all over that. I would imagine that like he's going to be like somewhere in the 40 to 60% range of guys that have Kieran Williams are going to win leagues, especially if he finishes strong during fantasy playoffs. And those are guys like that. So those 2 elite quarterbacks, Allen and Hurts, are going to be on a lot of rosters. You're going to see CJ Stroud there. Let's see, to pull up the guys that I think are going to be there. Purdy right now, Dak. These are all the quarterbacks. Jordan Love. Teams that spent on Patrick Mahomes are probably going to find. You're going to find a lot of those teams that didn't make playoffs. Some of the other guys, Justin Herbert, you're going to find a lot of teams that didn't make playoffs. Like Kamara. Kamara's a guy because his value got pushed down because of suspension. He'll be there. McCaffrey's another guy, but you had to spend on McCaffrey. Isaiah Pacheco, even though like I do say that he's a running back 2 overall, he's going to be there based off his capital. I could definitely see that. Like Rachaad White, Kieran Williams, Tony Pollard's going to kill a lot of leagues. David Montgomery's going to win a lot of leagues too. And then from a fantasy perspective, let's see, Nico Collins is going to be one of those league winners. Mike Evans, Christian Watson might be there depending on how he finishes. Michael Pittman, Puka. These are guys that we kind of knew were going to happen. And then tight end Laporta, McBride, Ferguson. Those guys will do it. Taysom Hill will probably be there. Again, what people spent on Travis Kelce, he's not going to be on this list. Yeah. All right. So Panthers, Buccaneers. I think I went off on my diatribe before I finished this. So Baker Mayfield, 14 for 29, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, serviceable. Rachaad White, 20 for 84 and a touchdown. Chris Godwin, 1 carry, 19 yards, 1 touchdown. Really disappointing game for him. Another guy with 3 targets, 0 receptions. Mike Evans, 12 targets, 7 for a 162 and a touchdown. And then Rachaad White. And that's that usage, goal line usage. And I did see this with Rachaad White. That 1 yard touchdown, goal line usage, and then receiving work. So combined with that with Rachaad White and half PPR, that's going to be like what 3.7 just with the 1 yard plunge. So like that's going to be 9.8 just based off of the good stuff. So the gravy is the 84 yards rushing to get you home for the week for Rachaad White. So, if he's going outside of those premium rounds, but he's going to finish as a top 10 running back with the correct usage, especially sometimes later in the game or later in the season. It's the correct usage later in the season when weeks 14, 15, 16, 17 that we're a little bit more concerned with than how it starts the season off on some of these guys. All right. Did talk about the Browns Rams already. 49ers Eagles. This was an ugly game. Like one of my co-managers, we had our Jalen Hurts store shares, and he was like, the 49ers are just thumping the Eagles. So Brock Purdy with those 4 touchdowns to go along with 314 yards passing. Christian McCaffrey, 17 carries, 93 yards and a touchdown. Deebo got home on his 3 carries, 22 yards. Everybody got home this week, it looks like, for our San Francisco Toys. Deebo, 4 targets, very efficient, 4 receptions, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, 48, a longer 48. Kittle, 6 targets, 4 for 68. Again, from a tight end perspective, that's a win. That's they can never lose me a week, but they can win me a week. That would win me my week for most leagues from the tight end perspective. Brandon Ayuk, 7 for 5 for 46, but found the end zone. And then Juwan Jennings vultured a touchdown from somebody. He got one too. And then from the overall fantasy perspective, non-fantasy perspective, I think the 49ers may be the best team in football. And between them, the Eagles, and the Cowboys, figuring out who's going to go to the Super Bowl, I don't know if there's a team in the AFC that can hang a candle to these 3 teams. So Jalen Hurts, 16 for 45, 298. And again, for the most part, San Francisco jumped out in the second half. So we're going to see a lot more throwing involved in this game. And Marcus Mariota got in late. Jalen Hurts, 7 for 20, and then the rushing touchdown on the ground. DeAndre Swift got knocked out, and right now, from what I saw, They're not saying what the injury is. I did see the play. It was a crossing route that he took a shoulder to the sternum. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's a concussion, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's some type of like rib injury, some chest injury. So being aware of that. I've talked about this, that I think Rashad Penny is going to be the guy to pick up. I don't know what everybody's going to talk about from a reactive standpoint. Kenneth Gainwell came in, did 2 for 5, and then they're 6 for 5 for 42 in the air. And then Boston Scott was involved on 1 carry and 1 27-yard reception. I think that like the guy to pick up, depending on what is a win worth, would be Rashad Penny. But again, it's going to be a little tricky on this one, because like even though they play Dallas this week, I'm not going to totally be expecting Rashad Penny is going to really get any of the passing work, which means that he's going to be in this like 10 to 15 carries, and he's not going to get the goal line work. But that would be the guy that, from an opportunity standpoint, is going to get there. And again, like we talked about with Chuba Hubbard, opportunity is still king. So, trying to get a hold of Rashad Penny and rolling him out in that flex spot week 14, that's what I would be expecting, depending on what the news we get with DeAndre Swift. So overall, with the Philadelphia, with the news, or with the caveat, this was a blowout and Philadelphia really had to throw to stay in this game. AJ Brown, 13 targets, 8 for 114. Deontay Smith, 11 targets, 9 for 96, and a touchdown. And then I'm assuming that Dallas Goedert was not active. Yeah, inactive for week 13. That's not surprising. And then Jalen Hurts, the turnover machine, only 1 fumble, did not lose it, recovered it himself, and no interception. So that's a little surprising to me versus the 49ers. And then Chiefs, Packers, and then again. So I talked about this already. So I'll just talk about the tale of 2 teams at this point. So the Green Bay right now, AJ Dillon does 18 for 73, combined with 1 for 14. And then we did see our James Robinson sighting, 1 carry and then 1 reception for -2 yards. If you're wondering, James Robinson won me a league. I'm always going to be rooting for some of these guys, after the bad luck that he had in with the Jaguars, how they treated him, and then the torn Achilles later on down the line. So like, I do have a soft spot in my heart for James Robinson moving forward, if you're wondering about that, but not overwhelmingly fantasy relevant. Christian Watson, 2 for 15 on the ground. And then Jordan Love. So same thing with Brock Purdy with Jordan Love. It may not be an issue how much Jordan Love is good at football, just like with Brock Purdy. There are so many weapons in Green Bay that all they have to do is make it easier on him. So Romeo Doubs, 5 targets, 4 for 72, along with 33. Christian Watson, 9 targets, 7 for 71, 2 touchdowns. Banging myself on the head for not picking him up this week. Tried not to get cute. Sometimes getting cute is how I lose leagues. Because my co-manager was like, I don't want you to get cute. Don't touch the roster. Dontavian Wicks, and this is another guy like I could see throwing a flyer at him next year. 4 for 3 for 43. Those downfield targets. Even though Jaden Reed is going to be the wide receiver 3, 5 targets, 4 for 16. He's going to have value too. And then Tucker Kraft, the 3rd round tight end with Luke Musgrave out, 6 targets, 3 for 37. What's going to be the problem next year is without injuries, and unless that we can get these clearly defined roles, they are going to be non-predictive and they are going to be very volatile, but they're going to win weeks. But based off their ADP, they may allow you to be able to pick a guy up and just leave him in your that one slot, like a Gabe Davis, and go like, I'm going to get 5 wins. I don't need to worry about the other 9 games of the regular season. I'm going to get 5 wins. And then if they spike, week 15, 16, 17, I'm going to win my semis. I'm going to win my championship. It doesn't matter. I know these guys have the ability to spike. That's probably what's going to happen with all these Green Bay toys next year. And then depending on what goes on with the running back situation, right now would not be surprised that either they sign a fancy name free agent. Green Bay doesn't tend to do that. I could see that Aaron Jones is going to walk, AJ Dillon's going to walk, and then they draft a shiny sports car in the draft that we're going to talk about. All right, the Chiefs. Some teams that we thought were going to be good are going to be bad. The Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, 21-33, 210, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Isaiah Pacheco, I did see that he got ejected from the game, and I have no clue about that. So yeah, tossed after strong performance. So yeah, ejected for throwing a punch in the final moments of the game. I don't know, like there might be a story there involving possibly a suspension that maybe not happen, but again, preparing for that on the cheap. If I had to guess, it would be if I didn't cuff Isaiah Pacheco to a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, depending on my league, a $0 bid on a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, waiting to see if there's any discipline on that from Isaiah Pacheco may not be a bad thing. But again, 18 for 110 and a touchdown, and that's to go along with the 3 for 13 and 4 targets to go along with that. Travis Kelce, 5 targets, 4 for 81. Rashee Rice, 9 targets, 8 for 64. So again, he's going to be on the he should be a weekly start. Whether or not he's a wide receiver 3 and whether or not he's a wide receiver 2 going forward, well, we're not going to know that until the season's over. But right now, the usage is there. Is just he should be in. If you're a Rashee Rice owner, he should just be in your lineup going forward. And then overall, from the Packers standpoint, Christian Watson, those 9 targets, 7 for 71, may be turning into more of a real wide receiver. And if he becomes more of a real wide receiver, he moves from that wide receiver 3 land, that boom bust wide receiver 3 land, into that more set and forget wide receiver 2 type range as we look at Puka score touchdown. So those are the things that we want to see from a fantasy standpoint, because having that gravy as a 4 from a wide receiver standpoint makes them safe. And then I can get all the other good stuff off of that. And that's all I really want to see from Christian Watson going forward. And to finish off, I think that's everybody except for the Seahawks-Cowboys game that was on Thursday night. I don't know if I talked about this. So Geno Smith, really nice 3 touchdowns. And then I went along with another rushing touchdown for him. Zach Charbonnet is doubtful. I don't know if this is going to be a Kenny McIntosh sneaky pickup week, or if this is going to be Kenneth Walker coming back. DK Metcalf having his best game of the year on 8 targets, 134 and 3 touchdowns. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 11 targets, 7 for 62. I do think there's a little bit of fire behind the smoke of Carroll coming out saying that they really like Jackson Smith-Njigba and they want to get him more involved. And that 11 targets would make me think that that's a possibility going forward. From a fantasy standpoint, I don't know if that moves the needle at all, because of what makes a guy like DK Metcalf really interesting, even though he's kind of had a disappointing week, is his ability to score on from those different phases. And he hasn't necessarily been a good contested test guy in the end zone or even downfield this year. I did see that he's been really bad with his contested catches downfield relative to what he's normally done, and then you can expect that to regress back to the mean of him being good. But a guy like Jackson Smith, JSN, if he's not winning down the field, and then he turns into this underneath guy that has to break tackles. He doesn't have the athletic ability to break one off deep with a broken tackles like a Deebo would do. So it limits his ability to be have the ceiling that you want out of that wide receiver 3 range. So I don't know down the line if I'm really interested in those 11 targets versus an Alec Pierce, going back to Alec Pierce to beat a dead horse. Those vertical targets downfield, those have a better opportunity to get me home a couple times a year than waiting for the game where Jackson Smith-Njigba breaks enough tackles and it can outrun guys to the end zone, if that makes any sense. And then Tony Pollard, again, probably not going to return on investment, 20 for 68 and touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, 12 for 116, 17 targets. Again, he's in that elite range. He may be the only guy. I'd have to look at the stats. Jake Ferguson, he may actually be the number 2 in this offense. I was actually thinking about this today. 8 targets, 6 for 77, a touchdown, and some of the design passing work, like screens to tight ends and stuff like that. He may be in that range of unicorn for tight end, where teams are like, hey, we're going to give him work, which means he moves up the food chain from maybe I should play this guy to I absolutely have to deal with the sub 40 degree days because he's going to give me those non 40 degree days moving forward. So I think that's about it for week 13, and I'll crunch the numbers and get out chasing the dragon tomorrow. And then I'm trying to figure out how to get the after waiver video to be more digestible than just me vomiting out numbers. So if you guys have any recommendations, go ahead and throw them in the comments. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.